Dear representatives of your filing and European Union Commission, dear professors, keynote speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the TODE 2017 event. On behalf of the ICADE, Comillas University Faculty of Law, on behalf also of its FinTech Law, Comillas Severis Observatory and its members, as its chairman, I'd like to thank you all for coming here. We are honored to host the TODE conference this year and join you to participate in this multidisciplinary scientific and professional key event of the Eurofiling agenda. Also, as the chairman of the FinTech Observatory, I'm pleased to announce the opening of its blockchain laboratory. That is a research initiative designed to explore the potential of blockchain for Spanish industries, particularly in the field of permissioned and non-public distributed ledgers. This blockchain is to be used and monitored by Spanish industry, including quoted companies from all sectors, but also by fintech startups. Other tech firms, public notaries, administrations, and public institutions will have nodes, validating and operative nodes, to operate and deploy their business models in it. They will do it in the first stage with experimental and non-profit aims. Also, non-governmental organizations, foundations, associations, universities, and other research centers will be permissioned to operate in this blockchain in the forthcoming months. This all, the functioning and organization and structures of this permissioned semi-public blockchain will be officially announced on 17th October in major cities of our nations. Suppose that our nation is still alive. The FinTech Comillas Observatory is one of the founding members of this initiative, and we are proud of it. Its name will be Alastria, and its initial developments on smart contracts, new consensus protocols, and sovereign identity infrastructures are starting to be held at the aforementioned blockchain. And our laboratory will be the pitch camp and realm of such experiences. We have at your disposal all the resources for the people interested in this TODE event, and also by third parties interested people. The aim of this TODE event is setting the premises and considerations to be made in the fields of RegTech, DataSphere, and RegTackle for the 2030 horizon. I would like to outline how much the Eurofiling experts and colleagues coming from all over the world have contributed on these regulatory developments within this field. Finally, I do not doubt that our panelists and keynote speakers will bring us a thoroughly integrated vision of the scheduled issues, for they are globally recognized experts in these fields. Well, this introduction is already becoming unbearable, so I give the word to Michał, as it's said in Polish. And I thank you all again, and I hope you all enjoy this conference. Thank you very much.
morning, everyone. Let me start with a short ad, short posting. I'm looking for a blockchain expert with at least 20 years of RegTech experience, as well as big data, cloud-based analytical capabilities to help in an IoT, AI-enabled machine learning project in a field of cybersecurity of automated financial supervision. Anybody? Good one. It's just a bunch of buzzwords, isn't it? Right? But do you know that actually someone has posted such an advertisement, job posting, on LinkedIn recently? And received quite a few submissions. Surprised? As of now, I can actually browse through approximately 10,000 profiles on LinkedIn who say they specialize in blockchain. A few of them state they have over 15 years experience in Bitcoin. In 2035, if we move fast forward, wouldn't it be this way that these buzzwords will actually form a job advertisement, that they will make sense, simply because they might be, and in my opinion they are, they form capabilities which integrate into and transform something that is way, way bigger, something that we call financial data ecosystems. And it is our goal today to debate how this ecosystem evolves, how this ecosystem will look like in these 20 plus, 10 plus years. Will it evolve, or does it actually require a revolution? In my personal view, there is one question of utmost importance. How do we ensure that this future ecosystem is based on trust, is trusted? Because it is of secondary importance whether this ecosystem is agile, scalable, fast, efficient, smart, or simply brilliant. The absolute foundation that we need to achieve is that this future ecosystem is trusted, is that people and organizations equally trust working, shaping, and participating in this ecosystem. This trust is actually a function of things that we have now and things that will only emerge in the coming years. It builds on equal measures and unequal measures on the social aspects, people, motivations, perceptions, innovations, as well as the technological aspects, things such as regulations, data, systems, technologies. Establishing this trust requires a forum where ideas, where thoughts can be exchanged without any boundaries. It requires a forum where regulators talk to the private sector in an open manner, without any preconceptions, where things such as labs, sandboxes, prototypes are debated freely between the participants. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to such a forum, to the second Trusted Open Data Ecosystems Conference. Today, we have brought to you together brilliant minds to tackle this and some other questions. They come from a variety of organizations with pretty amazing experience in banking, insurance, capital markets, data standards and technologies fields. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank someone who is already a legend in the field of banking supervisory data. And this particular legend is a good friend, Mr. Ignacio Boiso, a founding chairman of the Eurofining. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to thank Ignacio for making this event a reality. I would also like to thank very much Professor Javier Ibanez, who is the director of the FinTech forum here, the lab, jointly created with NTT Data and with Everis. It is quite an amazing thing to see the universities taking up this challenge actively and actually proposing forums, proposing labs where students can join, can test their startup ideas, can bounce them off the experienced organizations, perhaps find partners or sponsors or funders. I would also like to thank very much the team who has helped enormously to make this happen, particularly Monica from our team and a few colleagues from BRAG who are together with Derek de Brandt, the chairman of the Eurofining, with enormous efforts to make it happen, as well as Javi Mora from XBO Spain. So thank you very much for that. Now, therefore, I think it is the time to commence, to ask difficult questions, to put forward impossible ideas, to fiercely argue for the best solutions, and simply speaking, to contribute to build the trusted open data ecosystems. So, without any further ado, I give you the first speaker who will take us on this journey across the space, and who is better to do that than Monsegardia Gel, Digital Challenge Director at Sabadell Bank, and our first Guardian of the Galaxy. Monse, the floor is yours. Technical help. Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Just make it interesting. Okay. Yes. Gracias. So, in the meantime, I get in more voice. I will be going round, trying not to look to everyone. And this is why I will explain you. I like to present in this movement because I think we are in a moving situation. You are all here sitting, listen to us, but in the meantime, lots of people around the world, they are looking at the software. They are looking at creating new things. They are being innovative. And this is why I like to move around. Think because the world is moving. And we need to understand why it's moving and why the technology and the software and whatever you are going to do today and tomorrow is going to be really, really important and critical for our society. And this is globally. And this is international. As Michael said, I'm coming from Banco Sabadell, from Bank Sabadell Group, and we are looking at technology as a digital challenge. We have been thinking about what is going on, no? What is going on over the last 10 years. It's going on that we are in an age of transition. We are moving around, having more and more and more impact of the information technologies. Our life is changing, and it's changing dramatically, and we are not so aware of it. Why? Because we are adapting and adopting all these technologies naturally, So it comes to us. But do you think, or do you stop to think, or do you stop to analyze and research further why it's going to change our life in few years? Have we ever think in the future as cloudy as we can have? This is something that from the industry we are concerned. We think about, because we know that any digital change is going to impact our way of doing business and our way of living. This is something that we go into the roots. Why now? Why in the 21st century we are changing our way of doing business, our way of living, our way of communicating? And mostly because three factors. We have new clients, new people. We have new generation. Most of you are coming from this new generation. You and me were not born in the same time, and we're not having the same access to the information, to the digital information. In my time, I had to hear some noise like that was some kind of noises that I have to listen every time I wanted to connect to internet. And you will never listen this anymore, because now it's just a click and we are in the cloud, we are in the internet world. Nevertheless, more and more your time is changing. Nevertheless, what is going to happen in 3 years, we don't know. And this is why today and tomorrow is critical that all of you exchange as much as possible ideas. Who is the one who is going to use whatever you are working on? You need to think on these new clients or new users that are going to use whatever you are doing in the data information field. What you do in the data information field is going to impact directly life of thousands of people, of thousands of people. And this is why every one of you is important that you keep in mind for who you are doing that. But not just for who as a client, for who as a competitor. Because competition is giving also cooperation. And this is why the blockchain world is helping us. And I will go further in the future. But this is all what is going on is because we are in an age of new technologies. The information and the technologies around information and around the communication is helping us, all this change you are provoking is helping us to go further and find new users and find new competitors. And this is why in banking we are looking with very good eyes to all the fintech world. Not just fintech, but insurtech, RegTech. All these three areas of new discoveries and new technology use is helping us in the big industries. And I'm saying that because I'm coming from a bank. Banco Sabadell is from the 18,000. So more than 100 years doing banking. So imagine, no? We have been going through lots of changes. And now we are going through another change, and it's a critical change because it's volume. We are talking about volumes of information. How we will do that, no? Why we will do that? Doing what we are doing now. Connecting people, connecting things, connecting processes, connecting data, connecting, and this is very important, not just hardware, but the things that are wearables, chairs, cars, wherever is going to be connected to this fantastic internet that we are going to work further. And how we work further on this internet? Just creating regulations, thinking about what is this data, how we transmit this data, how we can guarantee we can trace this data, how this data can be reliable. All that is the work of you here during these 2 days. We need to be exploring. Don't think how we can do that, what we do, why we do it. It's because we have new opportunities. And this is innovation. We need to explore. We need to listen to the others, no? I think you are going to present, I saw the agenda, Nacho is fantastic. This afternoon we have 3 workshops, or more than 3, but at least 3 lines of workshops that are going to be disruptive. We are going to talk about different things, or ways, different things to do things. So I will encourage all of you to listen that, to listen carefully, because sometimes we think we are doing the right thing, but the thing that is not the right could give you more information for the right thing. So just learn about it. It's just the way to improve, no? To listen how not to do the right thing. It's just to encourage you to do more things in a proper way. I think that observation and exploring make us more clever because we are open-minded to new ways of solutions. We can combine, and this is something that we encourage from every sector. I will start to talk about blockchain and how blockchain had entered in my life and in the life of all of you. It's not just because we read about blockchains, but because someone, long time ago, had created something that disturbed our way of thinking about coins and currencies. And it appears in the 2009, no? Not long time ago, the Bitcoin revolution. The Bitcoin revolution had evolved in 2013 in some more technological way of expressing what was happening. And we started to talk in 2013, like very few years ago, less than 4 years ago, we were starting to talk about blockchain as a technology. And we talk about the distributed ledger technologies. Distributed ledger technologies is helping not just banking industries, but all the industries in parallel. And this is the big change. The big change we are going to have, and is going to happen, and will happen in few years, is that we will not think anymore in just banking. We will think in user cases. And who will be the user? Any one of us. And what happens with any one of us? That we need to do lots of things. We have a car accident. And when we have a car accident, we need to stop, we need to do papers, we need to call the insurance, we need to call the mechanical guy, we need to do a lot of things. We need to call the lawyer maybe, I hope not, but sometimes. All that is lots of time and effort we are doing manually. And in this time we are doing that, we are not doing what we like to do. Probably study, probably working, probably stay with the family. All that time that we are putting in just making things happen to help us because we had a car accident, we are not using it to live better. So, what is happening with the distributed ledger technologies? What is happening is that it's helping us that the insurance company can contact immediately the mechanical guy, can contact immediately the bank, can contact immediately the first people who is helping in the lawyer if the case, the situation is a claim. All that is happening in internet. All that is happening in the distributed ledger technology. All that is happening in blockchain. It's not now, it's in few years. And that is going to happen that we will win thousands of days of our life to dedicate to what we like to do. Think about that. Think about the revolution. It's a social revolution. And it's something that is going to happen because we are going to work deeply all together in construct this blockchain. What we did in Spain. This morning I was reading that in Japan, the financial services institution is governmental, is from the government. This decided to launch a banking agreement on identify a financial identifier, unique financial identifier for Japan. And that's good, that's excellent, because that will help a lot of citizens in the banking industry. What we did in Spain, a few months ago, we decided, few companies from the banking, and here in ICADE, from the observatory, that this change of having a single identifier in the blockchain is not just for banking, it's not just for finance, it's for anything we do. It's for anything we can do. And what this means is that in Spain, all together, all the segments of all the industries, the government, and all the institutions must agree in a single identifier or a single way of identifying in the blockchain technology. And what that means that we need to collaborate. So we started to do that. We started to talk between us, and soon we will let you know more. Maybe we will have this best, beautiful press release that Japan had this morning. Maybe we will have it in Spain. We will know. But one thing that is important, and that I want that you keep in mind, blockchain, distributed ledger, change of life, first step, identification. We need to identify whatever is going to be inside, transmitting inside the blockchain. And this identification must be regulatory, must be something we can trace, and something that is established, and something that is standard. And that is a work we need to do together. That is institutions together, jointly, with industry, with universities, with research centers, all together working to have a single way of identifying things and people. Imagine when that happens, when that will be happening, anything else could happen. Any transaction in the blockchain will be a reality. And something fantastic, I will not have to say how old I am. I will say I'm more than 18. I like that. Sometimes we are saying more information because the ways how we transmit information needs that to secure ourselves, to secure this data. With blockchain, we are going to go in another dimension. We are using the protocol layer of distributing information, the TCP/IP. We are enlarging this protocol with cryptology, and we are ensuring that every data that is transmitted there in the blockchain has an identifier and is traceable and is unique and is only once. And that is the magic of blockchain. And this is why I really encourage you during these 2 days, don't forget blockchain, please. This is the future, and it's the close future. And we need you. We need the RegTech, we need regulation, we need to be on board with us. So from the banking, from any segment of the industry, please go further in your studies, go further changing, use your time during this session, use your time after, in the afterward session, and if you look around all the agenda, take advantage, think further, open mind. Something that I will tell you is that we are bringing a new reality, and this is under construction. It's not real. We are not using it now. We start to test it. We start to have prototypes. It's not a reality. We don't have 25 years engineer knowing about that. We have only 4 years only of deep understanding of this technology. Only 2 of some proof of concepts, and only 1 of some proof of concept on segments, only in finance, only in energy. Is really, really new. And we need to use the next 2 years to make it global, to make it multi-segments. And I'm sure here in Spain, you are going to listen from us, because we believe on these new changes, and we like to do that, to be pioneering changes. Help us. All the ones that are coming from Poland, from France, from England, from all the different countries, help us to make a European reality, and also a global reality. As they did the Japanese to send a message today, we need to help European banking and any one of the institutions to launch also message. Blockchain is here to help us. So focus on the data, work together these days, and I really encourage you to enjoy every minute here with all these fantastic people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Monse. Now I'm giving the word to Mr. Wada from NTT Data. He was former representative of the Bank of Japan. Welcome.
Okay. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for giving me this excellent opportunity to share this moment with all of you. Okay. Today, Ignacio, my colleague, gave me a very difficult task. Okay. I have to tell you something, my experience, based on my past experience in the central bank as a regulator, and also the current mission on the IT vendor. So today I'd like to share some of my idea, okay, to tackle with the many issues related to the regulatory issues. Yeah. Okay. So today's content, okay, let me start with some background story. Okay. Then I'll touch upon the recent data trend in regulatory field and some technical issues in RegTech and something toward the future. That's the summary, important part. Okay. So let me start with some background story, mainly of myself. Okay. I have been working in the Central Bank of Japan since the year 1982 to 2010, 28 years, such a long time. And I have been working in the economic research department as an economist, and also IT department, and bank supervision department. And lastly, XBRL project leader. Today, I don't have time to touch upon XBRL, but I know that many of you are already familiar with XBRL. And I have strong interest in data supply chain and the solutions for the better regulatory monitoring and policy making. Okay. Then, I have been working since the year 2010 in entity data. Mainly, I'm building the regulatory reporting system, especially based upon XBRL. And also, I'm developing the so-called non-SQL database. And also, I'm participating in the Japanese government project, environmental report, based on XBRL. And among these events, okay, the most important one is encounter with XBRL. And that totally changed my life. Because when I talk about my new career in the IT vendor, people often ask, and still asking, why? Okay? Because of XBRL. That is so attractive and so powerful. My current mission is how to create the efficient data supply chain for business or statistics information, and also develop the methodology and technologies to connect so-called RegTech and FinTech. And lastly, develop the new framework for utilizing XBRL for non-numeric information, especially for ESG information. Okay. The basic background of my thinking is, if there is no technology is available, I should make it. Okay, simply, if there is no vendor who can supply the solution which I need, then I should make it. So that is my simple way of thinking. So everything that these topics are currently I'm now tackling with. My personal view of the XBRL through my past 14 years experience is what's excellent technology, okay, for data communication and reuse. But on the other hand, what delicate and cumbersome technologies, okay? But, okay, however, like everybody, okay, who is dedicating themselves for this excellent technology, I still believe the power and also the value of this technology. Okay? That's why I'm still working on this technology to make the society better. So what is the issue to be solved for the better use of XBRL? let's see the recent data trend in regulatory field. Right. This is the time chart. Right. And the XBRL was born in the end of 1998, okay? And developed through the year 2000. Right? And then there was a very famous event, accounting scandal. That enhanced the development of XBRL. And also in the year 2008, you know, the Lehman shock. Okay? That gave a new shock to the society. Then the data volume, which was recorded in XBRL, was dramatically increased. You know, the BCBS 239, Solvency 2, or say, other type of, say, the monitoring framework. And there's a big jump in the past trend and the current trend, okay, in the volume data and also the complexity of the data. Right? So what is the challenge, okay, in regulatory reporting? Challenges in data demand is happening in several areas. One is data granularity and reporting or sampling frequency. Okay. XBRL used to be used for the financial report. That was normally covering the quarterly, half-annually, or annually data. But the current requirement is to cover the single transaction, okay, every single transaction messaging and so on. And also the data type. Now the regulator wants to cover not only numeric information, but also non-numeric information. And also data traceability, which is required by BCBS 239. And then these requirements changed the type of data and also caused the increase of the data volume and the complexity, okay? And also the variety of reports. What is the challenging in regulatory reporting? Okay. Before talking about regulatory reporting, we are often mixed up with the boundary of fintech and regtech. So let's see what's the difference. Okay. Here's the financial institutions, and here's the customer or counterparties. And here is the regulators. And the financial transaction is happening between financial institutions and the counterparties. And also, regulatory reports are happening between financial institutions and the regulators. Okay. And this area, financial transaction, is mainly covered by so-called fintech. And the right-hand side, regulatory reporting is mainly covered by so-called RegTech. And the important task is how to harmonize those two processes in IT technology. So let's see some technical issues in RegTech. In the regulatory field, there has been a long time a little bit headache issue for reporting side. The financial institution, how to make reports in an efficient way. Okay? Because the regulator's demand is increasing and increasing. Right? For regulator side, how to use reports. In order to avoid misunderstanding, the regulators are using the reports, but it is not easy to fully use the data, because those data are reported on the cost paid by financial institutions. So regulators have to use the information to the full extent. And the enhancement of the efficiency in these processes is the important mission of RegTech. That is my understanding. Okay. Let's see some technical issues in the reporting side. Okay. Major regulatory reports prepared by financial institutions. Okay. I think there are three major categories. Okay. One is the fundamental aspect that is traditionally covered by business reports, such like BS, PL, and so on. And the second one is the operational and business aspects that is covered by risk profile report or transaction report. And the last one, non-financial aspect, covered by so-called CSR report or ESG report. And the first one is already covered by XBRL or PDL, okay, and already automated and manageable. Okay. The last one, CSR report or ESG report, is already reported in electronic way. Okay. Sometimes XBRL, sometimes PDL. Not fully automated, sometimes manually, but still manageable because of the reporting frequency is not so high, just once a year or twice a year. But the difficult part is the middle one. This one. This profile report or transaction report. This is actually the technically challenging area, not only for XBRL, but also for the society. Let's see some technical issues in regulator side. Increase in reporting variation, and also increase data complexity and volume. Okay? They are causing increasing database maintenance cost for regulators. I know some of the regulators have hundreds of tables, okay, to store the data, okay, into different tables, and it is very difficult to concatenate. And also, how to leverage these data with the current existing platforms, and how to manage, okay, the high-speed transactional data and so on. Okay? And lastly, how to combine the use of various kind of data, okay, from market data and so on. Let's see some possible technical breakthrough in the reporting side. This is the typical ISO 20022 transaction message, right? This is the typical messaging attached to the every financial transaction, right? And maybe regulator is interested in the summarized transaction report in XBRL. Right? That the problem is how to make this transition from XML to XBRL. Because the transaction is happening, okay, every microsecond, right? And it is technically the big challenge. This is one of the ideas. Okay? There is the transaction messaging, and that is happening from time to time, every second. And from the viewpoint of IT vendor, we can record the pickup these every transaction messaging data into data warehouse, like this. And at the end of the year, at the end of the day, or some say the sampling point, we can take out the necessary element from messaging and summarize it into XBRL format and send to the regulator. And the important point of this solution is there is no manual process. Okay? It is possible to fully automated process of these full reporting process. And another case, some of the possible breakthrough for the regulator side is using so-called non-SQL database. And the recent technology made it possible to read XBRL data automatically without any maintenance at all, and store the data in Hypercube and the data store. And also, non-SQL database can store the other type of data in the same database. Then make it possible to who data search, and then use for analytics or making statistics and so on. And also the data can be passed to the other systems, and also can leverage off the other type of existing platform. This is available with the current technology already. So let's see the final part, okay, toward the future. One of the very important aspects is the AI and big data. Okay? Maybe for big data analytics, AI has a good potential to tackle with. Let's see the image of the AI for for filtering, okay, the big data for analytics. Okay. AI with deep learning. Oh, by the way, this is the image of the robot which my team is now developing. This is the AI-based human communication robot. Okay. And rule-based and some case info is important for a robot or AI. And AI can supply the screening function. Okay. And this is the original big data. Okay. And data can be screened roughly and passed to the data analyst. And then at the end, okay, analyst can make the final decision on the meaning of the data. Okay. However, as you know, AI is not automatic. Don't trust AI for 100%. Okay? Some basic condition must be fulfilled. Important condition for AI-based data processing is, one is the well-designed rule base, okay, and sufficient volume of case data which AI can learn, okay, and also AI-friendly data format, and standardized markup language such as XML or XBRL is a powerful tool for AI to work on. A couple of months ago in Japan, there's a very interesting TV program broadcasting. That was a story about the automated chess robot, Japanese chess robot. And the chess robot finally beat the champion. And, but the interesting part for me was the learning process of that AI. Okay. The AI first studied all the past historical track record of the major chess matches, okay, as a basic knowledge. Then the developers prepared 2 robots and led them to fight each other. The number of the fight was more than 700,000 times. Okay? 700,000 times. That is, say, impossible number for the human champion to fight each other. And the robot, the AI, could learn something more than human could learn in the history of the Japanese chess. So some new, how can I say, the way of the making, all right, the playing the chess is totally different from the traditional way. Anyway, the learning process is quite important. And another one is the non-numeric information. Okay. I often spoke about the possibility of XBRL for non-numeric information, and such as ESG. You know what is ESG report? E stands for environmental report, and S for social report, and the G stands for governance report. And combining those 3 elements with financial report, then integrated reporting is possible. This is the new data demand. Okay. Let me introduce some cases in Japan, the environmental report in XBRL. This is the world first case of the government project to use the XBRL for environmental report. And I have been involved in this project for almost 7 years before joining NTT Data. Okay. And this is the image of the team. On the left-hand side, in their business corporation, submit their environmental report in XBRL format. And the investors can access to the system and download and digit the data. And also, here is the data analyzing tool is available, and also communication tool is available. Normally, different from the financial report, CSR report or ESG report, it is very difficult to have the direct communication between investors and corporation. Okay. So we try to create a direct channel, a kind of the chat channel between investors and individual corporation. This is the photo of the kickoff event of this year's environmental report project. But a lot of people, okay, this hall, this conventional hall, is the biggest one in the center of Tokyo. The capacity is more than 500 seats. But you can see there's no vacancy. And more than 600 people came to this event, and more than 100 people were not able to come in. So we prepared public viewing function outside the conference hall, just like the soccer games and so on. Anyway, so many people are now interested in this kind of environmental report or ESG report. And this is the number of the participants to this actual event. From corporate sector, they are fighting side. Okay. Almost say 400 companies are already registered at this moment, okay, of this year. I think it's still increasing. At the past year, only 64, but now 400, more than 400. And for investors, the first year only 13, but now 250. So almost in total, 700 organizations are participating in this event, this project. And not only Japanese participants, but also the participants from abroad are now joining, such as CDP, IIRC, and the major pension funds in Europe, such like, the pension fund from Scandinavian countries, and some investment advisory company in Europe, okay, are also involved in this project. So finally, the summary. Okay. Recent regulatory reporting requires more detailed, more frequent, more variety of data. Okay. On the other hand, this causes not only new reporting burden in the financial institution side, but also increasing data handling costs in the regulator side. However, if the standardized markup language such as XML and XBRL are suitably implemented, then efficient and effective reporting data supply chain can be realized. And finally, the combination of XML-based messaging in financial transactions and the XBRL-based regulatory report is an ideal way to realize technical breakthrough for the new generation of financial society. That is my dream and also my current mission. And I'd like to collaborate with all of you, okay, for the better future of our society. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wada-san. I think next TODE will be in Japan. With 600 people, I think that's a pretty good attendance. Without any further ado, I'd like to invite Derek DeBrand to join us, because we'll have the speech from Peter van den Hoel. Peter unfortunately couldn't join us in person. He is a senior officer at the European Commission, a Directorate General FISMA, which is responsible for capital markets, insurance, and banking supervision. And Peter will be sharing some thoughts about something that is related to the vision of this particularly important regulatory body in the European Union. He'll join us by Skype, and Derek, if you could kindly help us with the organization, I'll give you the... Derek is working together with Peter on this project. I personally believe that this is one of the more important projects concerning connecting the regulations, standards, and technologies, and I hope you will share this opinion. It's called Financial Data Standardization, and it embraces numbers of regulations, but I'll leave it to Peter to share it. Do we have already a connection?
Yeah, I think so.
Peter, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. So good morning. Thank you for joining us via Skype. Radek, I think we can already play the slides, or would you like to first play the video to give Peter a few words, maybe? Okay. All right. Peter, we can see you on the screen, so if you could open up, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to give an update of the FDS project. So I would, of course, have liked to be there myself in Madrid today, but unfortunately, to the busy agenda, it was impossible to combine it this time. But I will be happy, of course, to share the progress of the project by video conference today. So I hope you can hear me fine, or?
Yes, you're welcome.
Yes,
anyway.
very well.
Okay, perfect. So then, just to start with the slides, I will provide an update following last year's presentation. So for those who attended the last year's conference, they know that the project was already presented a year ago. At that moment, it was in an initial phase, but right now we are much further evolved. The steps have become more concrete, and I will provide you where we stand today. So the first steps you will see on the second slide. I think just to present myself and the context. I work for DG FISMA, the European Commission, which is the DG that is responsible for financial stability, financial services, the Capital Market Union. We have within the Commission work program a program that is called REFIT, which stands for Better Regulation. That is to look at the legislation the Commission has put in place and look how it can be more made efficiently. Our own DG and unit created some time ago a project that is called the Call for Evidence to collect input in the financial sector on all the supposed burdens, costs that are perceived by the market. And based on that, we launched this project, the Financial Data Standardization Project, which is a concrete initiative following the claims from industry that the reporting is too complex, too costly, and that there are overlaps, gaps, inconsistencies, but I will come back to that. So first of all, the objectives of the project, they are to share more efficiently financial data by enhancing interoperability and using data standards. Secondly, to reduce the compliance costs, also by promoting the principle of once for all, that is a report once basic principle, which is quite a paradigm shift in thinking, but politically this is supported. The other actions are to explore solutions that can improve the way that data can be used or shared between authorities. And that would all lead to an improved monitoring as well by the supervisors, which allows the allocation and the evolution of risk in the EU and the global financial system, which is, I think, the final aim from the Commission, the supervisors, that there are better data available to take the necessary actions in case there would be threats in the financial system, and that they can be anticipated in time. So, first of all, who is impacted? Who are our stakeholders? You can see that on slide 5. So our regulatory scene has three parties. We have the European Union, who create the legislation. And then on the right side at the top, you have the entities that have to report to the supervisors, competent authorities, according to different legislations in different formats, probably different life cycles. And at the bottom right, you see the supervisors, also the regulators, who indeed define the details of the rules, and they oversee the sector. So all those is actually the current stakeholder overview, like we see it in the project. If we then look at it, what is currently happening, that is that we see that there are two main constraints or defining factors in the sector. One is the compliance cost. So in order to get more information, there is of course a cost associated, but there is also area that you can monitor for risk. If you put that then in a curve, you will better see how everything is positioned together. So we see it on slide 7, that what we did with the call for evidence, we came to a summarized input that there are many costs linked to inconsistencies, duplicates, overlaps, redundancies, but there are possible synergies. If you look on the costs, what summarized the study reveals is that currently the cost is much higher than it should be, which means you are now in the cloud with the red cross. But it should be possible with less cost to come to the same monitoring. So that's what the survey, the industry claimed. But the FDS project is actually looking into the possibility to see is there evidence to support it. But at the same time, it is trying to increase the curve, like you see in slide 8, by proposing measures, not only to do it with less cost with the same reporting, but also by taking appropriate measures that will be based on the conclusions of our analysis, to take some measures so that we can actually get a better monitoring and a more efficient reporting for the same cost. So what did we do? We started analyzing, and the approach, the methodology we developed on the highest level is a combination of a top-down approach that we started by all the legislation in the scope of DG FISMA, which are level 1, level 2 legal acts, regulations, directives. We went, started at level 1, we went to the details to level 2, and as far as we could get to see where the reporting obligations are defined and in which details, including formats, overlaps and gaps. And then we did that in combination with a bottom-up approach, which started at the data models as used by industry, and then tried to come to the combination of the two findings to come to conclusions. So how does that look? You will see on page 11 that we had to first analyze all the legal measures that we could find in scope, and there were quite a lot. And we organized that in what we call reporting frameworks, and we came to an overview of 55 reporting frameworks. Within that, we had to make an assessment about the stakeholders that are involved, and also the reporting frameworks that make sense to be subject to a detailed analysis. And those are the ones that are the structured ones. And the structured ones are the ones that have a data exchange format described in the legislation. So on top of that, we looked at ranking criteria to see what are the most important ones in case we would have to work in order. That was based on market size, reporting population, the report, the frequency, the possible discrepancies between the national implementations and the EU legislation. And all that at the end came down one summary page that you will see on page 15. That is a short list of 22 structured data reporting frameworks. And in a ranked order of objective importance. And more importantly, I think, is that the stakeholders are also mapped, which means that very often several stakeholders are involved, which points to the need to think in a cross-sector holistic way. It's clear that while the Commission is involved everywhere, that there is always, in most cases, one of the supervisory agencies in the lead that do the actual implementation. So this picture is actually a starting point for further detailed analysis. So at the moment we are here, we have our scope, we have our overview. And now we continue with the detailed analysis of all these frameworks according to the methodology. That will then at the end result in a cross-framework synthesis of all the perceived, not the perceived, the actually the factual gaps, overlaps, injustices, inconsistencies, so that we have an objective basis for further action. And that was needed because in the call for evidence, all the information we received was objective. So that means that everyone is agreeing that there is too much burden, but it was never clear what exactly the burden was, and we had to define it ourselves. So if you look at the next slide, the challenge is huge. So you will see that there are many stakeholders involved. And I think here is also the big difference between the FDS project and what all the other initiatives are doing till today. That the FDS project has an approach that is cross-sector, and this has never been done before. And I think the second interesting point is that at the moment we have, depending on how you define it, 80,000 or more data points. So it's a huge job, cannot be done by one person. But for that reason, we will also create an expert group to support us. But at the moment, we are not there yet. We just kick off the detailed analysis, and we hope to complete that end of next year. So what are already some of the conclusions we have today? One of them is that while analyzing the report once principle, it seems that the biggest problem is not the report ones or many. The biggest problem is the defined ones. So we tested already our methodology on some test reporting frameworks, and only already on that, it seems that the biggest category of overlaps are the definitions that are not totally the same among the different frameworks. And in some cases, they could be the same, but not always. And so you could call that the category of the vague definitions. But based on that, it is an easy step to conclude that if you would be able to define all the data elements once in the financial sector, which in our case is supervisory reporting, we would take a major step forward in addressing the current reporting burden. So for that reason, we have been looking into the concept of the supervisory reporting vocabulary. And I come back to that because it's one of the concrete actions that we will start to follow up. But maybe the first slide that is interesting is 18, how do we achieve the goals? So I think one of the goals is that it's needed that initiatives are taken at the center of the regulatory scene, and there the European Commission is well positioned. Also, the idea of a centralized, holistic approach is getting at the moment political support. So we are able to start to take actions and initiatives. In order to do that, we, as I said, we will engage with the key stakeholders. We also think about standardization initiatives. And we also want to leverage existing European initiatives. So one of them is the European interoperability framework. And another one is the concept of core business vocabularies. And all those are already existing within the so-called interoperability program ISA Squared from the European Commission. So just to give a quick idea on slide 19, you see that the interoperability framework covers many layers, which the project is already as well in this approach, and future solutions we will put on the table. So it is not just the technical layer and the data standardization layer, it's also governance, organizational, and that has to be combined with possible legal initiatives. And all that has to be put in the right political context. So we are not an ICT project. I would say not even a standardization project. We are an interoperability project. And we will look at possible solutions by taking initiatives in all these layers. The page 20, you will see an idea of the methodology. You can also look it up, the link is there. But it's a methodology for creating data dictionaries that is already existing, that we would use our methodology to come to our own data dictionary. And regarding the define once principle, I think by page 22 is actually pointing what we try to achieve. That is, if you compare that to the first slide, where all the entities are working a bit in parallel. The idea is to put the kind of core RegTech vocabulary, we call it, in the center stage between the regulators that write legislation like the Commission, the supervisors who have to monitor it and very often are involved in level 2 and implementing technical standards. That would be linked to the entities who have the report. And if we would achieve that, which is our current short-term goal, we would already take a major step forward towards a solution. So how does it work? You get the idea a bit in page 23. I will not explain all the details, but the bottom line is that if we could make both legislative draft text and the data point models all be linked to the central core RegTech vocabulary, the result would be that we all would speak the same language, and that the definitions would not lead to any extra work anymore or confusion. It is from that moment clear what is meant, and it can always be reused. So the slide 24 gives a bit the path to get there. So I don't think I want to go too deep in that right now, but I think everything I mentioned is a bit summarized in the slide. The key steps I see to get to the core RegTech vocabulary is to take initiatives that allow us to standardize that. I think based on the inputs or the outputs that the SDS project can provide after doing detailed analysis, I believe we will be halfway towards a standardized RegTech data dictionary. And as I can see it, one of the key steps that still need to be taken is our ontologies to develop it. But the part on page 24 is the high-level view of our approach. So that's the last slide that I want to share. That is a bit the roadmap. So I think if I all summarize what I've been telling in understandable way on the, let's say, the highest policy level. I would say that the project is actually having a vision and an approach that follows three main steps. To phase one, which is currently happening, is we study the problem that we define. The call for evidence was the starting point. And the FDF project is now analyzing the details by first analyzing how the legislation came to reporting frameworks and now going to the gaps, overlaps, inconsistencies and redundancies. After that's done, we move to the second step, of which I think we can define it as the enable step, that we believe we have to take already some actions that probably only the European Commission can take because it should be taken on the European level. So one is to create the foundations for the defined funds approach, which is then linked to core vocabularies. I think you can use it for several names, but at the moment we name it the RegTech core vocabulary. I think another step that we might take up next year is that rather than only looking at the decentralized data dictionaries, we would also look at reference data identifiers and study that domain to see if we can also take action there and to come to a common reference data and identifier approach. I mentioned already the expert group. We will set that up. We will also work together with the stakeholders. I think that will all lead to a governance model. And a part of the governance would be that with new legislation, even the legislator would use the same common language in the data dictionary to draft new legislation. And that would be linked to technology for future lawmakers. That might be tools that link their actually drafting of legal text to a common data dictionary. And then the last step, which I call improve, that would build on phase two. So phase two is the enable step, which is now slowly kicking off. I see that as a kind of catalyst step that would allow other actions, which are not necessarily taken by the Commission. But once it's clear what the common language is and the common reference data and identifiers, our vision is that the markets themselves, once it's clear what should be done, might also take up a lot of initiatives to develop innovative solutions that look for less burden, less costs, and more efficient reporting. And we see on top of that that there might be a need for a permanent structure that also maintains the databases, the reference data, the dictionaries, and might also play a role in the gradual re-engineering of the regulation, the business process, and optimizing reporting frameworks. So I think this summarizes our current thinking. So you will probably notice, for those who have been there last year, it's already quite advanced compared to what I was telling last year. I think the most important step is that on the highest political level, there is now interest in this project, and they also expect, at least for the two first phases, that we finalize it. At least phase one, we finalize it by the end of the year. And for phase two, that some of the steps we take already initiative. So this project is, compared to last year, it was still all a vision and very much under the radar. It became a concrete project. So this concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think because of time, we'll need to move to the next speaker now. So I think if you would have any questions to Peter, please feel free to submit them via more regular, traditional means, so to say, and we'll try to pass it to Peter and see if there would be any possibility maybe to provide some responses. Without any further ado, I would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. John Turner. the CEO of XBRL International, and John is a good friend for a number of years, and so I've asked him to do a little bit more challenging thing, to set his mind adrift and think about how things will look like in 10, 20 years from now. He's got quite a nice experience to do that. He's coming from back in time from the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority, where he worked as a data expert, and now is the CEO of one of the larger standardization bodies across the world. So I hope we'll be able to see some of these future insights from John. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michal, and good afternoon, everybody. It's very nice to be here. I'm sorry that I'm not going to be here for very long today, because I think that the idea behind the TODE effort and the workshop approach and the future focus is excellent. I'm also sorry that you're not really going to be hearing from me today. This is a polite health warning. You should take something from the next few minutes or not. It's really up to you. Because we've had Michal asked me to do this talk, and he said, look, think about 10 years out, 20 years out. Let's try and think a long way out. And I was trying to work out what to do there. But then, fortunately, there was this sort of really amazing combination of situations. But I don't know whether, well, you don't know about this, but it turns out that in 2025, there was an extraordinary astronomical event. Just 7.5 light years away, there's a black hole that is going to, it's really quite confusing, turn up. And that black hole has sort of created a weird mirror. And it's meant that instead of information going forward in time, it can come backwards in time. So today we've actually got a report about the state of the XBRL standard in 2032, in 15 years' time. And I don't really understand how that's operated. And it's also a little bit disappointing about what we've actually got in the report, because it's lots of information from 15 years in the future. So what we really want are the football scores for the next few years, because that would be quite helpful, or maybe the Euro Millions lottery numbers. But we didn't get any of that either. What we got instead was a report from the CEO of XBRL International in 2032. Now it turns out that's actually an artificial intelligence and not a person anymore. But anyway, let's see what we can make of where these standards sit and what turns out to be important 15 years in advance. So if you look back 15 years ago, that is back to 2017, the idea that structured digital reporting wasn't just helpful but was essential was really only beginning to take hold. It was being used in a very large number of environments, mostly regulatory reporting, just beginning to be enterprise reporting in 2017. But the idea that it wasn't the syntax that was important, but the meaning around all of the information in all of those definitions was important, was only just beginning to take hold. And even now in 2032, it isn't entirely understood. However, since there's this new black hole communication arrangement, it only seems sensible to try to inform you guys back in 2017 what has happened and what continues to happen now, back in now it's very confusing. I'm just basically confused. Anyway, thought it would be helpful to discuss a few areas relating to financial safety, to capital formation, and some of the things that underpin those things. So in particular, that relates things like identity, granular information, dictionaries, and the central importance of platforms, interoperable platforms, and the way that you can discover information in this future age. So let's start by looking at financial safety. So the next generation digital currencies have obviously made an extraordinary change to the way that all kinds of things are dealt with. Fundamentally, it makes moving money around much safer. It also makes it much more transparent, because it is possible for authorized people, which it turns out are mostly the regulators, to track exactly what's occurring. But that really has changed the way that financial institutions need to be thought about. So now that about 35% of all money is not held at a bank, it's just held in a wallet. It's just a distributed, you think of that as Bitcoin in 2017, but that's no longer relevant for reasons you'll discover. But in any event, that idea is really important. And all this information and all this cash is held in wallets, not in bank accounts. I mean, the older generation, I guess that's the people here today, still rely a lot on bank accounts. But the younger generation, they're not interested. And for companies, it's much easier to do things in wallets. But of course, that money needs to be managed, so that all gets managed in real time by intelligent agents. So what we end up with is this sort of ongoing battle. It's a real problem. It's a sort of a neural war between different AIs. So we've got, on one hand, the agents that are investing money, and they're trying to find ways to do that in ways that maximize the return. And then you've got regulators who, on behalf of all those depositors, it's not a proper term anymore, are needing to ensure that that's safe. So the monitoring process and the investment process are working not always hand in hand. Now, it turns out that not all of those models work. We still have lots of problems with various kinds of long-tail risk. Insurance is a real problem because, I mean, all of the climate change models, they still talk about 2 degrees, but I mean, in 2032, we're already much warmer. It's 3 degrees now, so we're sweating in London. A lot has had to change. Regulators have had to change completely the way that they collect information, what they monitor, and the way that they monitor that information. And they've had to think about all of this in terms of real time. Now, the really good news is that through standardization of
para nosotros es una gran satisfacción volver a...
Now, one of the other benefits, perhaps, of this new approach
de las conclusiones del foro BP, llevamos 15 años de relación con la cátedra, es la 13ª vez que se presentan las conclusiones del foro, en esta ocasión sobre movilidad sostenible, y realmente poder tener como socio y como impulsor para que estudiemos y discutamos sobre estos temas a BP es desde luego una alegría y una satisfacción, no solamente por el interés que tenemos en estos temas, sino sobre todo por la confianza que han demostrado en la escuela, en la cátedra durante estos últimos 15 años. Además, este tema también nos resulta muy cercano, puesto que desde BIT estamos promoviendo un observatorio sobre el vehículo eléctrico y movilidad sostenible. Me acompañan hoy en la mesa Enrique González, director de Comunicaciones Institucionales de BP, e Ignacio Pérez Arriaga, director de la cátedra BP, que presentará un resumen de las sesiones internas del foro, como decía antes. Después tendremos una mesa redonda sobre movilidad sostenible en las ciudades. ¿Cómo se ha afrontado este reto en otros países, en otras ciudades? ¿Cómo lo estamos afrontando nosotros? ¿Dónde están las principales dificultades? ¿Son estas dificultades tecnológicas, regulatorias, ideológicas, políticas? ¿Cómo va a afectar esto a los usuarios? Supongo que son algunas de las preguntas que nos hacemos y algunas de las cosas que se han estado tratando y que serán hoy abordadas. Los que estuvisteis el año pasado seguramente, depende de la memoria que tengáis, yo como lo tenía escrito, pues claro, me acuerdo. Me voy a repetir en algo de lo que voy a decir ahora. El año pasado hablamos de transición energética y hacía una pequeña reflexión sobre la necesidad de encontrar acuerdos de largo plazo cuando tenemos que resolver problemas que son de largo plazo y que van a requerir de inversiones y de infraestructuras, y con la movilidad sostenible nos va a ocurrir lo mismo. El objetivo está claro: necesitamos un modelo sostenible de movilidad. Discutamos, analicemos todo lo que haga falta,
A nosotros nos encanta tener la cátedra y tener la posibilidad de haber dedicado este tiempo de calidad de unos cuantos expertos para discutir sobre este tema. Discutamos todo lo que haga falta, analicemos todo lo que haga falta y acordemos qué es lo que hay que hacer, porque si el objetivo lo tenemos claro y también tenemos claro lo que hay que hacer, lo que queda es lo fácil, solamente hay que ejecutar las acciones, trabajar y sobre todo no volver a discutir. El año pasado ilustré esta misma idea con un proverbio africano que dice: para moverte rápido viaja solo, para llegar lejos viaja acompañado. Desde luego hoy, seguramente en España más que nunca, pero yo tengo memoria, necesitamos de acuerdos de largo plazo para poder llegar lejos. Tiene la palabra Enrique González, director de Comunicación y Asuntos Institucionales de BP.
The other thing that all these technology changes have created is a real blurring between the lines of public and private securities issues. The need for capital hasn't gone away. The innovation continues to be within the small businesses, the startup businesses. Some of those will be lifestyle businesses and support families. Some of those will be enormous new businesses which will become public one day. But the process of acquiring cash and acquiring investment in those businesses has changed in a way that you might be able to imagine in 2017, but is really very substantially different. Now, all of that real-time monitoring, which underpins the way that our capital markets work now, isn't possible without really clear definitions and standardization in that process. So perhaps that's of interest. Now, identity, of course, is something else that really underpins this. There was the terrible phishing storm in 2022. We think that killed off about 40,000 companies and wiped 11 trillion off the markets. It was a terrible crash. There was a lot of other impacts. I mean, there was an awful lot of deaths in hospitals as a result of that environment. And, I mean, people just cut the cords. So all the people that in 2017 were investing in Internet of Things for hospitals and healthcare, forget it, because that's just... nobody wants to take those risks anymore. That hasn't happened anymore. There's lots of other Internet of Things, obviously, but not in healthcare. Anyway, moving on, the LEI, the Legal Entity Identifier, just after that awful period in 2022 turned out to be really coming of age. And the legal entity identifier, which if you don't know about, you should immediately go and find one and indeed acquire one. So the LEI turns out to really provide a way not just to provide identity about individual organizations, but for the role that people work in organizations. So the combination of LEIs and digital security means that now a lot of the communications that we do is insulated, so that we don't accept any communications unless we know that it really comes from somebody acting in a well-identified, well-understood entity, which is perhaps not the way that Tim Berners-Lee expected the internet to work, but it turns out to be essential. However, that's also very important for everything to do with reporting. So because of strong cryptography, really trustworthy open reporting is possible today, thanks in part to open identity. So in theory, only the people that are supposed to can see those reports, and usually that works extremely well. Clear identity has also created that transnational tracking of funds that we were talking about earlier, and really underpins investment and simplifies a lot of things. Again, because we can publish information into the marketplace very quickly, and it's very clear that it's legitimate and where it's come from, and of course it's audited, then that process is perhaps simpler than it is back Now it turns out that all of this information is incredibly important, and granular data, the collection of huge quantities of very granular data, underpins a lot of what regulators rely on.
Son muchas y estarán disponibles en la página web de la
Unfortunately, that didn't work
cátedra
out quite the way
con
we'd
datos y
hoped.
con información, pronto.
And I don't know which one it was, I wish they told us, but
Como se ha
what we
dicho,
thought was the best
hacemos 15
protected
años
central bank in the world
de la creación de la cátedra
was hacked.
y ha
All
sido
the
realmente
granular
una
information
relación
about real-time
magnífica la que hemos
positions
tenido
was
con BP
stolen.
España,
And then
estimulante
the
por una
hackers
parte
had
y
a
por otra
massive
con total
benefit.
libertad para elegir los temas, para
And
encontrar
so
los
that was a real
planteamientos,
problem,
para
and that's changed the way that
proponer
granular data
cosas.
works. It's helpful
El tema de
that
este
those
año ha
hackers
sido
were actually
modalidad
finally
movilidad
found,
sostenible.
and they've been locked up, so
No
that's
es
good.
precisamente
But,
mi tema de
that's meant that
especialización,
although
pero he aprendido
essentially
mucho
every single
estos 2 días en el
transaction
foro.
in every
Espero que se
single
note
regulated
por el bien de
entity
todos.
is tagged with
Lo que hemos
clear
hecho
semantics
fundamentalmente
at the time of
ha
production
sido
and stored
más
centrally.
que
It's stored centrally
proponer
inside the business.
soluciones o
And then the
recomendaciones,
regulators can
el
acquire
identificar los
reports on
problemas
demand,
y
which
yo creo
wasn't
que
perhaps the way
formular
that
bien las
some regulators
preguntas.
thought that might work
Y queda
originally.
mucho trabajo por hacer.
So all of those definitions have needed to be
Empezamos
standardized, and
entonces,
those are now really
y lo primero
sort
que
of
quiero
baked
decir
into
es
all
algo,
the
una
software
transparencia que siempre utilizo, nuestra forma de ver lo que
Now, none of
entendemos
this works
por
without platforms,
sostenibilidad
and
en relación
one
con
of the
la
reasons that
energía
that's occurred was, of
es
course,
el
this
poder
very
garantizar
important
acceso a las
declaration
diversas
from the
formas de
United
energía
Nations,
moderna
which is the
para
United
satisfacer las
Nations
necesidades de todos
Declaration on individual
con
rights
un
to
precio
data
asequible
ownership and network
ahora
access.
y a futuro.
That's been a very
Y
important
esto
change over the last decade.
inedudablemente lo
And that came
tenemos
out of
que
some of the
ligar
trust-busting
con
actions of the US Congress
el
to break down
conseguir
some
que
of the
nuestra
monopoly
economía
activities
sea
of
baja en
big
carbono.
technology firms. It turns out that
Los
all the
foros,
social
que son
networks were
13,
a
como
bit
se
of
ha
a problem
citado hace un
anyway.
momento, que en los cuales que hemos
Now, what that has meant is that those platforms have had to
puesto en
open
marcha
up.
durante todos estos años.
They've opened up
Aquí
competition.
tienen todos
They
los
don't hold
temas que
any
hemos
of the
ido
data which
tratando.
gives information about individuals without those
En el año
individuals
2009
giving them
tratamos el
those
tema, que es
rights.
prácticamente el
So
mismo de
that's
este
a
año,
big
Sustainable
change the way that
Transportation
law
Policies,
works right
aunque
around the
estábamos
world,
algo
and
más
it's also
centrados
changed the way that
en
technology
tecnologías
operates.
y bastante
But it's
enfocados
also
hacia el
created
peak
a
oil
real
en aquel momento.
appetite, for
El
open
año
and
pasado
interchangeable
elegimos, yo creo que con
platforms,
mucho
not just in
acierto,
terms of things like social networks
una transición energética en
which
España
breakfast
y
cereal you
cómo
buy,
mirar
but
hacia
also
un
it
camino, un
provides
futuro, un roadmap.
a platform-based process for connecting
Y este
to
año
and
pues hemos
accessing
elegido el transporte.
information.
Motivos
where
obvios,
appropriately
es algo que es un tema que está alcanzando todavía más preeminencia, además de su contribuyente obvia al desarrollo económico y social, pues es también un contribuyente importante a la falta de sostenibilidad del modelo energético actual. Y esto por dos causas. Una, por una parte, el que tiene una contribución elevada a las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero, un 23% del total, de las cuales de este 23 el 75% corresponde al transporte rodado, que funciona en un 90% con productos petrolíferos. Y por otra parte, y cada vez más importante, por su contribución a la polución atmosférica. El transporte es responsable de aproximadamente la mitad de las emisiones de
regulators, some of them get defined by national or international standard setters, some of them just get reused. But most of all, that sharing and reuse and comparison turns out to be what underpins reporting in the modern age. So in encouraging reuse and sharing of terms between those regulators and between accounting and finance fields just is at the very core of all of this. So way back in 2016, someone suggested that data is the new oil. Well, of course, it's much, much more valuable than oil, which is really not that important going into the future, but only with clear definitions, only where that's shared and reused and is done so as far and as wide as possible. Now, interoperability is another big theme. Back at the turn of the century, when a lot of standards started to construct, they all sort of seem to be competing. Well, we now very much understand that that's not a question of competing. Different environments have got different purposes. Accountants need different information to economists, and auditors need different information, and business people need information again. What's important is to have open platforms that are well constructed, that use reusable dictionaries, and that means that those data definitions can be connected and can intersect. Now, that hasn't always worked out. There's an example here that the AI gave about there being 6 times as many repos outstanding as actually there were in underlying securities. So that could have been a bit of a data definition glitch, but this interoperability is vital. So ensuring that those data definitions get reused isn't just something for government agencies, it's just as important for the private sector and a large number of other disciplines and other groups. Now, working out how to fund and make that collaboration operate, because it's a human task, not an AI task, is a vital part of what needs to happen going forward and is something that we're really only working out how to do really well now in 2032. So then perhaps the other biggest change since 2017 is this idea of discovery, which was concentrated perhaps in some academic networks at the time that you're reading this report, but it's now very, very important. So we've seen a real coming of age in this area. So clear identity, accessible dictionaries, and distributed platforms mean that it's possible to acquire the right information at the right time. And that is only available through sensible discovery and indexing. Now, ESG reporting led the way there because that used to be sort of buried in PDF reports and sitting on company websites. But now that's truly accessible, it's digital, it's fully indexed. So it's possible to interpret a bunch of risks that never used to be able to be identified. And that's actually a very important part of financial analysis these days. But that's also true for things like Pillar 3 reporting, which you'll be pleased to know is still being just about worked out. So standards, collaboration, and embracing these new technologies were all part of the picture that is driving economies right around the world forward today in 2032. So that's an awful lot of change. What has changed? Well, everything and nothing. The XBRL standards, as well as lots of other standards, are relied on by businesses, by regulators, and a host of other organizations to help ensure that we have consistent and clear definitions to be able to underpin all of this economic activity. It provides a trusted and effective way for definitions to be created and maintained, and that's what's perhaps most important. All the syntax you still find people that are still using the old XBRL 2.1. You guys remember that stuff? Anyway, all of that is only possible through enhanced collaboration. So collaboration is a very significant focus. And that collaboration allows and underpins the discovery of data by the right people at the right time. So that's quite a lot to take in. And maybe you found that report from the future interesting. I would just add, back in 2017, that many physicists believe that there's such a thing as a multiverse. We live in infinite numbers of parallel universes. So maybe that was just one future. And the reality is that you guys need to ensure that we create that future. And events like this are an important part of that process. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to stay for the next day and a half, but I'm hopeful that you'll have a very, very productive time and hope that a few things were helpful there. So thanks.
Thank you, John. I just hope that one vision will not realize and my Bitcoin savings are going to rise. I'm going to buy this Aventador that I'm dreaming of.
Okay, we have spoken about financial data standardization, core vocabularies, and so on. And now let me give the word to Ana del Valle. She's director of the coordination service of mercantile registries in Spain and also of mobile assets. Yeah. So I give her the word, and I'm sure this is going to be interesting words from the standpoint of the Spanish regulation.
Well, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organization for inviting me to take part in this in such an interesting event. Well, RegTech phenomenon implies the use of new technologies to ease implementation of regulation and especially to help entities fulfill legal requirements in order to reduce associated costs. I'm going to speak about the Spanish Business Register as a source of reliable information for both public and private agents, and about the challenges, especially regarding new technologies. But for this purpose, I think that I have to explain you a little bit about the nature and the characteristics of our commerce register in Spain. Well, I know that we are a little bit short of time, so I'm trying to go as quickly as I can. Well, commerce registry in Spain is a legal and public institution whose role is to provide reliability and certainty to corporate and commercial registered transactions and publish data. As our register is not a deposit of deeds or any other document whose documents that are scanned, indexed, archived, and published, the registrar, who is a professional lawyer, must check the legality of the operations that have to be registered. That is, that those operations and the documents in which they are formalized meet all the requirements to produce strong legal effects that our system provides, especially trust in the private transactions, so third parties will be protected by the situation as recorded from inaccuracies or deficiencies in the decision-making by companies. The responsibility may be borne either on the company's directors for falsehood or for errors in their acts, or by the registrar who has not checked and has not controlled legality properly. All registers, because we are land, commerce, and movable property registers, we are all grouped together in a public corporation called the Colegio de Registradores, that looks after the quality of the service provided and mediates between relations between registers and final users. And it coordinates electronic services, central electronic services, such as the interconnection between registries supplying online information of all registered data 24/7. It has an access point to registers, and also interconnection between our national business registers with BRIS, which is the European Business Register Interconnection System that has been introduced by the European Commission recently. It began its working on last 8th of June. It allows access to updated information on companies and their branches at an EU level, and also interoperability in cases, for example, cross-border mergers. The Colegio holds to the public insolvencies register that manages and publishes information about companies and entrepreneurs involved in insolvencies processes. The Anti-Money Laundering Prevention Center, which is particularly effective because it interrelates data handled by the three kinds of register that I have mentioned. It supports a single point of attention that helps companies or entrepreneurs to fulfill all requirements for any operation that can be related to a commerce register, and also maintains an statistics process center that collects and processes statistics based on registered data that we supply to all kinds of policy makers, regulators, and administrations. So this information is used by these institutions to take decisions about business and economic policies. And finally, it's a local operation unit for the issuing of LEI as a legal entity identifier that you have just talked about. An important a large amount of the data we manage comes from annual accounts that are submitted to the business register. So the use of XBRL language in annual accounts has meant an improvement of the usefulness of data contained in them. We, business registries in Spain, we've been working with XBRL since 2001. Here you can see the principle or the most important milestones in the standardization process that we have developed and achieved. And in this sense, the Colegio develops and provides through our website free software to help electronic filing of annual accounts, develops and integrates internal software to process and validate XBRL filings, coordinates the development of an app for software suppliers to make the transition to XBRL easier, and in that way to help the endorsement of a national taxonomy of accounting standards. Here you can see the flow of data. Companies with software, forms, and applications provided by our website send their data to the business registers, and from the Commerce Register, we provide online information of registered data to all kinds of users, and also to our statistic processing center for the studies and the publications that it carries. This language, based in XML standard, can be used by all participants in the chain of information, providers of data, companies, registries, analysts, banks, application developers and suppliers, and so on. And it has lots of advantages because, well, it provides transparency and reliability, implies cost and time saving for the user, helps the automatic process of filing and delivery, allows massive process and checking of data coherence, and makes information exchange quicker and secure between users, registers, and regulators. So in this way, it helps to make public and private decision-making easier. Continuing with new technologies, let me talk to you a little bit about two topics that are currently in fashion. We have already talked about them. The first one would be blockchain. Well, there have been a lot of talk about blockchain and its possible use in different fields further than Bitcoin. As you know, blockchain is characterized by its privacy, its essential decentralized nature, its extensive use of cryptography as a means of securing transactions, and the absence of a central controlling authority, such as a bank in the case of Bitcoin. There's a lot of discussion about arising problems such as privacy, block size, professionalization of miners, emergence of specialized agents with increasing cost, high energy consumptions, and so on. So discussions about blockchain have been mainly about its technical aspects, problems, advantages, but little about legal implications. Perhaps because most or the first one of the blockchain supporters have been computer scientists and not legal professionals yet. But there is a trend to confuse databases with public registries, whose function is protecting the interest of unrepresented third parties, being much more than databases, especially when we are talking about rights registration systems like Germany, Australia, or Spain. Not systems that are based on the recordings of deeds that merely timestamp and archive documents. Well, we could say that there are two versions of blockchain-based models that could be applied to registration, a hard one and a soft one. Well, the hard version would basically consist of a public self-managed blockchain working like Bitcoin. Instead of coins, the system would store smart contracts sent by the parties who have signed them. The blockchain would then replicate would be replicated in the nodes of a free access peer-to-peer network, having the same kinds of nodes as in Bitcoin, where miners would validate transactions by performing mathematical searches and would be rewarded with some kind of virtual money. But there are certain characteristics of this strict or orthodox blockchain operating protocol that are actually incompatible with the objectives that registration systems pursue and the rule of legal certainty that we have to serve. First, there is the use of privacy, as users in a blockchain system are identified only by their public key, while registration systems are a mechanism of transparency, of disclosure, and helps general interests such as fighting crime, for example, corruption or money laundering, which also requires the true identity of registered holders to be known. Another issue is personal data protection, because all information stored in blockchains can be freely accessed by anybody. This is an especially sensitive subject in Europe. But really the main objection is that blockchain systems conduct no check of legality or scrutiny or form whatsoever. Someone has to check that the various component circumstances of the deal are legal and do not affect pre-existing third-party rights. We could think that these issues could be addressed by standardizing the kinds of contracts that can be registered in the land or the common registry. But this could clash with freedom of enterprise and freedom of contracts, both of which are traits of the modern market economy. So we have to take into account every aspect and use technology as a tool, not as a goal. Choosing the hard blockchain would make it seem like the technology is the truly essential item in the process rather than a tool. The only contractual relationships people could have could be the ones that this technology could handle and allow. Well, the soft version of a blockchain model would consist of a private blockchain used only as a mechanism to provide technical security for registration entries while maintaining the institutional registration model that I have described, in which documents must undergo registrar's legal check before the information is entered in the chain. But this system would increasingly resemble other technologies, other technological options that provide the same guarantees, such as the Spanish model, which applies electronic signature technologies to documents and entries and uses electronic timestamps and data replication clusters. That's why some people think that with this information, instead of putting problems on the table and study if this technology based on blockchain can help to solve these problems, what they're really doing is putting this technology on the table and looking for problems to which it can be applied. So let's use the first approach that I have pointed out. That's to say that we have to use this technology to solve problems, not to find problems to use the technology. So the other topic that I would like to talk about is cybersecurity. Because digitalization implies an intensive use of technologies and communications to allow modern citizen, which is used to the use of technologies, a higher level of access to registries. But this digital environment introduces big risks for cybersecurity, because companies and administrations are an attractive target for cyber attacks. Because of the generalization of the Internet of Things, mobile devices are easily connected to networks, and this is becoming a vector for these attacks. So the main challenges are an early detection of these threats, their neutralization, prevention, and protection. And in this way, through the Colegio, action and steps are taken about it. For example, initial audits to detect the current registry status, a main security plan adapted to data protection legal provisions, and manage security services in communications, network monitoring, including hardware, software, and infrastructures. And at an European level, we have an association including registered organizations of almost every jurisdiction, and this is one of the topics we are analyzing right now, because any attack taking place in a commerce registry of one country will probably happen next in another one. In this way, there are interesting proposals which are aimed at knowledge and incident sharing, even developing a kind of portal of cyber security alerts, best practice studies, discussion topics, and legal and technical measures. But we need to face all these problems in a comprehensive way and take into account international cooperations. Finally, I'd like to point out that the level of importance and quality of the effects of a registration system, of its output, depends directly on the quality and intensity of the barriers of its entry, its input, and essentially on the width of the powers given to the registrar. I put the emphasis on value because registration information can only reduce transaction costs when the judiciary considers it trustworthy. So both the entry and exit of data in and out of the register must be fully reliable. If the register provides unreliable information, the judge will disregard it and the economic agents will reject it, making business contracts more expensive or in some cases even impossible, as they will have to be based only on personal relations between entrepreneurs. In those countries in which registry system has strong legal effects, the market has not produced alternative mechanisms or specialized organizations because they are not needed. There is no lack of security to cover. So the added value for a registration system lies with it being able to solve the market's legal security problems with the lowest potential costs. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. It has been amazing hearing you just speak about dialogue between the regulator and implementing the standards and registradores de España problems. But I have to point out something very briefly because we have no time now. We have to we have lunch afterwards. But the blockchain obstacles that you have been referring to in your presentation are referred to, say, Ethereum or Quorum or public access non-permission blockchains, because now there are other blockchain types, like that where we, without reduction of the legal benefits and security, you can protect privacy, you can protect personal data. You have freedom of contract protected, and standardization is no problem. So I think registradores de España might take profit from semi-public permission blockchains where there is segmentation, efficient segmentation of information and
I mean, perhaps in my presentation you could have the sensation that we are against blockchain.
No,
it's
not really.
Just
I wanted to point out that
yes,
those obstacles are referred to public blockchains.
Yeah.
So
that's what
not to DLT technologies in general.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. I have talked a very little and very point of view from our point of view, because you are talking about essentially regulators and sharing data in a financial field and all that. We registrars, we are always looking for security, reliability, not to change systems or kind of registration system because there are a lot of different registration systems all around the world. And we think that ours is very effective because it gives big reliability. And we are talking of blockchain. Everyone is talking about blockchain, and there's very little people who knows what's exactly blockchain. That's why I was being a little bit summarizing aspects, and that's why I talk about public blockchain, yes, private blockchain, a kind of hard version, an orthodox, or the first approach to blockchain, which was, we all know, Bitcoin, and a soft one. I mean a soft one inside a kind of private blockchain. And I think, and I know that blockchain can be very, very useful, but if you always preserve the qualities of every block of this change. I mean, if you, of course, there are lots of applications even in company law, in contracts. It's very, it could be very, very important in contracts. Whenever you respect freedom of a contract, and there's a big field also in corporations, because there are lots of things that the companies must do in which using the blockchain technology could be very, very, very positive. Yeah.
We are well aware of the finalities of the registrars of Spain in terms of juridical security and so on, and that's exactly what permission blockchains led to do. Thank you very much, Anna, for your very interesting presentation, and I have to declare closed the first session. We have lunch now. Thank you very much, all of you. And we shall be back at 13:30 or 14 to continue with parallel workshops, tracks, and see you later.
So we have 3 workshops, as you can see on the screen. One is dedicated to the a very interesting project called schema.org by major financial and global IT software vendors. That's by Mirek Sopek and Robert Tripus. The other track is dedicated to the blockchain, business, and techies, and the third track is dedicated, split between the assurance and emerging audit technologies by Leif Watson and Eric Cohen, and the brainstorming for a financial regulatory data dictionary by Ignacio Boiso and Derek DeBrand. Do we already know which room is which, pretty much? In the agenda. If you could please take a look at the website, the web-based agenda version.
The online version of the agenda, you have the rooms. In any case, the blockchain is here. Mm-hmm. The tutorial with the colleagues from university. This is the third floor, room E308. And Eric Cohen and Leif Watson in the room 301. In any case, all of them are in the online version of it.
All right, thank you very much, and see you back at around 1:30.